Hi, I'm Octavius Black, CEO of MindGym, and I'm joined now by Nick Pope, Global Learning Director of Unilever, who's just launched a single management development program for Unilever's 16,000 managers worldwide. Nick, where did this all start?
It started with our ambition as a business, which is to grow from what was a 40 billion euro business to double the size of that, 80 billion euro, but at the same time reducing our overall environmental footprint and having a positive social impact. This is Unilever's business ambition. And that ambition calls for quite a different way of doing management and leadership. We ask ourselves, do we have the right amount of talent, the right quality of talent to lead an 80 billion euro business? And we ask ourselves, well, what does the leader of the future in 2020 look like? So it certainly prompted us to review how we do our management development.
And Nick, I think you're a big doctorate, and I know you're a great studier of the science in this. Where did you look for the academic or intellectual base for what a good manager needs to look like?
Well, there's no shortage of research into what makes a great manager and what makes a great leader. That in itself is part of the issue. It's trying to filter out for people the stuff that really makes a difference and not to focus on the 160 or so competencies that managers are expected to do. In an increasingly busy, overburdened life, the challenge for anyone in learning and development is to present people information that really makes a difference. So after a very long review of every single management model out there, we settled on the 7 talents model because we believed, first of all, it was very reliable and has good validity. But secondly, it contained a couple of interesting nuances on management development that I didn't see in other models. One was this ability to thrive, which is how somebody manages their energy, how they stay resilient as a manager. If you yourself can't be resilient, then how do you drive resilience for others? And the second was putting relate right at the center of the model. In a world where people are increasingly losing trust in organizations, the role of the manager to help be that conduit between the employee and the organization is even more important than it ever has been. So I was attracted to it for those 2 reasons, plus the fact it's simple, pragmatic, and people get it.
That's really helpful. Tell us more then about how you put it into practice. So what was the program then designed around the 7 talent model?
Well, Unilever, of course, with the number of employees it has, already did a lot of management development. We had 7 programs in our general skills curriculum, which themselves scored fine. I got nice happy sheets back from them. There didn't seem to be a huge amount of issue. The challenge was they didn't talk to each other. So the programs often contain duplication. They didn't necessarily talk about what does being a great leader look like in the context at Unilever. And we know from our employee engagement surveys that whilst we're pretty good at management development, we're not as good as we need to be to really lead an 80 billion euro business. So I started off by reviewing the 7 management development programs that we had, and then looked to streamline those into 3 different programs for our supervisors, our managers, and our managers of managers.
How did that go down? Presumably some people were quite attached to the programs that already existed and they could see nothing wrong with them. How did you go about changing or building the political will for this sort of transformation?
Yeah, it was very tough. So how do you go about convincing somebody that something is broken when what they see is fairly okay results? And the way I went about it is really the opportunity that having a single management development program created. We're very big at Unilever of trying to actively manage people's careers. And there's a reasonable chance that if you had gone through the previous management development programs, you may have had counter points of view, and you certainly would have had duplication. So it's positioned very much as a journey that the employees can start off as supervisors and work their way through to managers of managers.
So there's one consistent program, it has no duplication, it has the same intellectual model, the 7 talents running through it.
It does, so it has the same model, but that's activated in different ways. So, for example, relate at the manager of manager level will look very different to the relate at the supervisor level. As a director, the skills of relate are very much about trying to clear the path for your employees, build networks for them, whereas as a supervisor, it's very much that one-on-one interaction.
That move from buddy to boss.
Exactly, yeah.
And can you tell us about one of the programs, maybe the Manager of Managers, which is often one of the hardest groups to reach because they may think they know it all already, or they want this thing that perhaps they call leadership, and management doesn't really appeal. How do you go about engaging them, and what did you deliver that made an impact?
Well, everybody wants to go on a leadership program, I find, and nobody wants to do a management development program. And the reality is the content and the process that you go through is often very much the same. So we try to infuse the best parts of a leadership program in our core management program. And that starts with a very deep reflection of the individual about where they're at as a leader. We have a fantastic diagnostic, which, as well as doing all the good stuff you'd expect on 360s, also gives them what we call the Manager Net Promoter Score, which says, how likely would you be to recommend Nick as a person to work for? And that's a very tough message to wake people up and to encourage them to go into their survey. So our program begins with the survey. They then get a one-to-one debrief with a coach. There's a 3-day face-to-face where we use action learning and action coaching heavily, so peers supporting peers, and then it's supported with 3 virtual workouts. In itself, probably not a massively innovative, progressive design if you're just doing that one-off, but our scale is such that we run around 100, 150 of these programs a year. So trying to do this consistently in a customized way has been one of the biggest challenges that we've had to face.
You talked a little bit about consistency. Can you just a little bit more about customizing? How do you make it relevant and local?
The relevance of the participants comes pretty much down to the quality of the coach. So wherever possible, we try and use local coaches who know the context, who know the culture. And because participants spend some time with the coach in advance, the coach is able to, day one, in the opening hour, make it relevant to them. So it's certainly management development, we believe one size doesn't fit all. But at the same time, what we want is a consistent approach to being a manager at Unilever. So I think we're on the journey. We haven't got it perfect, but we're trying to strike this balance between a core fundamental way of managing at Unilever whilst respecting that things are done differently in different countries.
And so this ability to deliver impact at scale comes in the impact piece, at least in part, from the coaches. Can you tell us a bit about the training you gave them and how you helped equip them to make the Unilever core content relevant in Malaysia or Italy or wherever it happened to be?
We've partnered heavily here, and we've invested a lot of blood, sweat and tears. Had some good programs and had some not so good programs, but all of them have been very powerful learning for us. And one of the things it called to me that I had to do was to bring the coaches together for 3 days to really help them understand at a much deeper level how things work at Unilever, the language, the acronyms, the unspoken taboos, as well as the content. So I guess my biggest learning from this year, we'll deliver 100 or so programs, 110 programs. My biggest learning has been the investment in coach quality and helping them become part of the Unilever way of doing things, the Unilever culture.
You talked a little bit about how you set it up and quite a bit now about what you've done. What proof do you have that any of it's worked? Is there any data that you've got to support the impact? What happens afterwards?
We have a number of points of data. We have the classic stuff, as you'd imagine, the level ones, happy sheets, which all score great. Everyone, 100% of people score it as very good or excellent. But I always take those with a slight pinch of salt. They're useful, but they don't really tell me are people transferring the data. We have a training transfer tool which helps us understand to what extent are people using the skills that they've learned. That suggests a vast majority of people are using the skills on a daily basis. Probably what's more important is, are people coming back for the program? This isn't a program which I've made mandatory. This is a program which people will, and HR business partners will book if they feel it's going to add value. And our growth of the program year on year is tremendous, which makes people think we're onto something useful. And right now we're getting the results from our engagement survey and we're getting performance management data in. We're doing a correlation of 100 people from the program to see whether or not their 360s reflect an improvement in employee engagement and ultimately performance management as well. So we have a number of different inputs which give us signal that we're onto something good. As I said, it's early days. We've had some very tough times that we've been through, but the data would suggest right now that it's having an impact.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the commercial impact or the business impact? Because often people will say, it's all very nice you've done some work to improve manager competence and capability, but how do you justify that to a hard-nosed business that's growing to double in size and maintain its, reduce its global carbon footprint?
Well, first of all, Unilever, right from the CEO down, have made a commitment to leadership development and management development. As you know, we've recently opened up a centre in Singapore where we cycle our high potential leaders. So from the classic ROI, how do you justify that? That's not a question that we have to ask at Unilever, because there is from the top down a commitment that Unilever is a place where people learn to lead, first of all. Nonetheless, it means we shouldn't take that for granted. So particularly when we work with our commercial functions, our sales functions, we're able to draw some correlation between their performance and the inputs that we've given them. And that's exactly the research that we're doing right now, is trying to correlate hard sales figures performance with inputs around 360s.
When you looked to introduce a single management development program across Unilever worldwide, you looked at a number of partners. Obviously, we're delighted that you chose MindGym. But could you tell us a little bit about why?
Yes, I can. First and foremost, I think the research is solid, it's robust. This isn't somebody just teaching about their experience of what they found has worked over the last 20 years. And often when you dig into these things, that's what it comes down to. So as a geek at heart, I took comfort in the research. But really that's just a starting point. It's how that's activated in a very pragmatic and user-friendly way, which initially attracted me to the MindGym. What's kept me in the MindGym with the very difficult times that we've had over the program is the quality of partnership, in that I had a very big part of my reputation staked in this. And if I didn't feel that my team at the MindGym also had their reputation staked in it, then I would have bailed a long time ago. But that quality of partnership, trust, and responsiveness has been the reason why my initial choice was correct.
Great. Nick, thanks so much for sharing your thought. I believe we can follow you and Unilever on LinkedIn.
That's right.